Welcome. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please click the subscribe button. The goal is 1,000 by the end of the Packers season. We are climbing that mountain. We will get there. It takes 2 seconds. Just click the subscribe button. Packers-Browns, final thoughts for Sunday's matchup in Cleveland. Green Bay's won 6 of the last 7 between the two. The Browns haven't beaten the Packers since 2005 when a Trent Dilfer-led Cleveland Browns team won at Lambeau Field. Obviously, it's not an every-year matchup or even every 2-3 years. That can change when you get that one random AFC matchup. But typically you play a division in the AFC each year. So it's not an every-year matchup, although not beating Green Bay since 2005 does sound pretty drastic. Let's start with I was going to start with the Browns defense, but news dropping. I'm recording this, what is today? Thursday. I'm recording this late Thursday afternoon after practice when we have found out that tight end Tucker Kraft suffered a knee injury in practice, ended up on the injury report, and initially the reports I'm seeing did not sound good. I got to find the one. I think it was from Rob Domofsky, shout out checking. And just the way he had worded it made it sound pretty bad, and I guess we still don't know the severity. So Domofsky had said Tucker Kraft added to the injury report, suffered a knee injury in practice. Kraft will undergo tests to determine the severity. Packers have reason to believe it's not a season-ending type injury. And I think just even having to frame it that way, hey, the Packers don't think it's a season-ending injury, just makes, and maybe I'm just reading into it wrong, but when I hear them even have to mention that, it makes me think like he's going to miss significant time. Like if it was a bad enough knee injury where they're like, we don't think it's going to be season-ending, but then Matt Schneidman of The Athletic had said, I'm trying to find his tweet now. He made it sound a lot better. Tucker Kraft's, this is Matt Schneidman of The Athletic, Tucker Kraft's knee injury suffered at practice doesn't appear to be a long-term issue. He'll be added to the injury report. And Ian Rappaport said the same thing, that the Packers don't expect it to be a long-term issue for Tucker Kraft, but still, if you're missing him even Sunday in this game against Cleveland, you're missing your best tight end. You're missing, I think it's fair to say, your best threat in the passing game so far through 2 games. You look at the first 2 weeks for Tucker Kraft, and obviously the breakout game came last Thursday against Washington. He had 7 targets, which led the team. He had 6 receptions, 124 yards, and a touchdown. He's had a touchdown in each of the first 2 weeks. You could kind of feel this bubbling with Tucker Kraft last year, where you felt like he might really have a strong second year. And then this offseason, everything's smooth coming into his third year. A lot of the national analysts, and you talk about these fantasy football people for these big brands, and Tucker Kraft was constantly labeled as this will be a breakout star at the tight end position. And you go for 6 catches, 124 yards, and a touchdown in primetime in a standalone game last Thursday, yeah, it's going to get some notoriety. Yeah, it's going to get some attention. So to miss Tucker Kraft for any portion of time is very, very significant for the Packers, because so far through 2 weeks, you're not just talking about, hey, that's your top tight end. And I'm not speaking to the fact that, missing Tucker Kraft, and what does that mean? Like, can Luke Musgrave step in and fill those shoes? I'm not even looking at it through that prism. I'm looking at it just from missing Tucker Kraft and who has been the top threat in the passing game, at least last week, and you could argue through the first 2 weeks for the Packers. And it's a team that already, Christian Watson on the PUP list, Jayden Reed, foot surgery and surgery to fix up that broken collarbone. So he had the 2-for-1, 2 birds, 1 stone surgeries that were done for Jayden Reed. So you're already missing significant contributors. You talk about missing Tucker Kraft. I don't even want to look at it through the lens of, hey, can Luke Musgrave fill those shoes? Because I think Tucker Kraft's one of a kind. And Tucker Kraft, even if you take out what he does in the passing game, he's a far, far superior run blocker to that of Luke Musgrave. So that would be a significant hit for the Packers. Obviously, I'm just speculating right now based off how these tweets have been worded, but maybe best case scenario for the Packers is he misses the next 2 weeks. You have the bye, and then he comes out of the bye week against Cincinnati, because you have at Cleveland, at Dallas, and then the bye week very early on in the year, week 5, and then you come out of it and you host the Joe Burrow-less Cincinnati Bengals. But I don't know. The initial report made me think, like, if the Packers are saying, even though they're saying they don't believe it's season-ending, to even have to phrase it that way makes it sound like it's pretty significant. So hopefully Tucker Kraft's all right. That'd be just another major blow for the Packers passing game. Let's talk about the Browns defense, though. Browns-Packers on Sunday. I think the Browns defense isn't getting near the amount of love that they should, quite frankly, entering this matchup. And I think a lot of it's skewed because for those that just go box score hunting, and maybe there's some Browns fans watching this, and that's a phrase I use once in a while, I always go the other direction. I don't box score hunt. I don't like people who box score hunt. And I think if you did that last week and you just looked at the final score and you saw that the Browns lost 41-17 to Baltimore, you would assume like, oh my gosh, the Ravens absolutely carved up Cleveland's defense. 41 points is a lot, but it really wasn't how it played out. This is not me providing a crutch for Cleveland's defense. This is just the reality of how it played out. So Baltimore puts up 41 points. Well, they had a defensive touchdown on a scoop score, a fumble by quarterback Joe Flacco, Roquan Smith, scoop scored at 68 yards. So that's 7 points right there. Baltimore had a 5-yard touchdown drive. Not 5 plays, a 5-yard touchdown drive, and they also had a 24-yard touchdown drive. If you're an offense, you'd be damn near the bottom of the barrel in the NFL. If you start first and goal at the 5-yard line and you start another possession at the opponent's 24-yard line, at a minimum, you're thinking 6 points. Automatic. Ravens turned them both into touchdowns, so the numbers to me were skewed. If you just look at the final score, you'd assume that Baltimore just carved up Cleveland's defense, 41-17. But they had a defensive touchdown, a 5-yard touchdown drive, and a 24-yard touchdown drive. I dove into some of the deeper numbers with the Browns because I remember going back and watching the All-22 from week 1 when they played Cincinnati, and we'll get to this drive in a little bit. And I talked about it yesterday with Myles Garrett. There's another video I posted with Myles Garrett being a one-man wrecking crew in that matchup against Anthony Belton if you want to go back and watch that. But week 1 against Cincinnati, it was a 17-16 game, fourth quarter, about halfway through. Bengals had it 1st and 10 at their own 20, up 1 point. And the Browns went Myles Garrett sack, Myles Garrett sack, Myles Garrett applying a quarterback pressure, freeing up McGuire for a sack of Joe Burrow. 3 sacks on 3 straight passing plays, all out of the shotgun for Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. A Cleveland defense that held the Bengals to 7 total yards of offense in the second half of that matchup week 1. And so I think if you just look at the Ravens posting 41, you're being led astray a little bit. Cleveland pressured Lamar Jackson on 44% of his dropbacks. That's a very good number for the Browns defense, for any defense. In Cleveland, despite the team overall giving up 41 points, their defense is first in yards allowed per game, 191.5. They're not, I know it's 2 games, it's a small sample size, but you also have to keep in mind who they have played. And I know Joe Burrow's hurt now and he's out now, but he was fine week 1 against Cleveland. And the Browns lost that game 17-16. They missed an extra point. They missed a chip shot field goal. Quite frankly, should have beat the Bengals. But that defense was stout. And that defense was okay. It was good. I thought it was good in moments against Baltimore, despite what the final score indicated. And so they're not playing Joe Schmo. They're not playing bottom barrel offenses in these first 2 games. And so if your argument is, hey, they're yielding 191.5 yards per game, they're allowing that defensively, which is tops in the league. It's number 1. And you can say, well, it's only been 2 games, small sample size. Fine, that's fair. It is a small sample size, 17-game season. I'm plucking from a 2-game window right there for Cleveland. But I will also mention those offenses were Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Chase Brown, and the Cincinnati Bengals, and then Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Derrick Henry, and the Baltimore Ravens. Not 2 offenses that you shoo away. Those are 2 offenses that if you're preparing for them, you're like, shit, this is going to be difficult. And the Browns in those 2 games combined 191.5 yards allowed per game. And it all starts with Myles Garrett. And again, I mentioned different video. I did a deep dive into the potential Myles Garrett-Anthony Belton matchup. Rookie second-round pick. For the Browns fans maybe watching this, rookie second-round pick was not expected to be, thrown into the gauntlet this early in the season, but injuries to Aaron Banks at left guard, Zach Tom at right tackle. Anthony Belton started last week, played 51 snaps against Washington outside of a holding call, a little blemish on the resume early on. Anthony Belton was pretty damn good. Now, Zach Tom has practiced in a limited capacity, and Zach Tom said after Wednesday's practice that he's doing fine moving side to side, but it's painful to run. Like when he has to run upfield and try to get to that second level of, his assignment in the ground game for Green Bay. He said it's painful to run. Thursday, which is when I'm recording this earlier on, Matt LaFleur said that Zach Tom would be limited in practice, which he was, and that he would give him until Sunday before Green Bay made a decision. Typically in the past, when Matt LaFleur gives a player until Sunday, doesn't bode well for their chances to play. Now, what's interesting about this matchup is Myles Garrett will typically line up on the other side of the line, which would mean his matchup primarily, or for a lot of reps, a lot of snaps on Sunday, would come against Rasheed Walker. I think we're foolish if we don't think that the Browns don't smell, blood in the water and there's sharks swimming around with the potential to just have Myles Garrett for a good chunk of his reps, I should say, not chunky, go on the other side to match up with the rookie Anthony Belton, if it is Belton out there on Sunday. And hell, Zach Tom, I would say at this point, is ascending towards being a premier right tackle in the NFL. Sure got paid like it this offseason, a well-deserved extension. But if Zach Tom's out there, and I still don't think he will be on Sunday, maybe I'll be proven wrong, he's not going to be 100%. And so I think we're foolish if we think Cleveland will stick to the MO of, hey, usually for most of his reps, we have Myles Garrett on the left side of the line if you're looking at it from straight on. They'll cherry pick that opportunity, and they should. And it's not a knock on Anthony Belton. It's just a rookie second-round pick who wasn't expected to play, let alone start and anchor the right side of the offensive line this early in his career. Had to do it in week 2, now potentially in week 3. So it does somewhat change the dynamic if Zach Tom's in there, but you have to remember he's not going to be at 100%. He said it's painful to run when he's trying to run to that second level. Aaron Banks, left guard who missed week 2, he and Nate Hobbs, the prized free agent acquisitions for the Packers this offseason, he missed week 2. He said Wednesday he's playing. He said he's playing. He was at practice, limited capacity, again on Thursday. But Browns defense, when you talk about Cleveland's defense, you're just circling 95. You really are. There's other playmakers, even to the second and third levels of that defense. Ward's been one of the best in the business at cornerback for quite a few years now, former first-round pick. But Myles Garrett is a one-man wrecking crew. Browns rank 6th in pass rush win rate and 3rd in run stop win rate. A lot of that has to do with one man. That one man is Myles Garrett. Secondarily, kind of tight. By the way, Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. It takes 3 seconds. Always appreciative of all the support. The goal is 1,000 subscribers by the end of the Packers season. It kind of ties in, goes hand in hand with the first stat I gave you about the Browns. They're first in the NFL, allowing 191.5 total yards per game, which is exceptional through 2 weeks. Browns are first in the NFL in rushing yards allowed per game. Think about this number. And then again, think about who they just faced. The Browns, I know it's through 2 games, small sample size. A lot of people love Chase Brown, the running back for the Bengals. And then you have the Ravens, and it's like, oh my gosh, they have King Henry and Lamar Jackson. And through 2 games so far, the Browns are first in the NFL in rushing yards allowed per game at 45.5 per pop. That's crazy to me. Cleveland magnificently held Derrick Henry, King Henry, to 23 rushing yards last week and Lamar Jackson to 13 rushing yards. They had a combined, Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, a combined 13 rushing attempts for 36 yards. That tells you something about Cleveland's run defense and the defense as a whole. Don't overlook it. Josh Jacobs, meanwhile, we'll go flip side of the coin. Josh Jacobs has had trouble finding avenues of success through 2 weeks. Not all on Josh Jacobs' shoulders. The big boys up front having trouble paving those avenues in the ground game for the Packers. And you just look at the base numbers for Josh Jacobs. I can simplify it pretty well instead of suffocating you with some of the deep dive analytical numbers. If we look at it at its base, at its core, Josh Jacobs, last year, first year in Green Bay, 4.4 yards per carry. Pretty simple to understand, right? 4.4 yards per carry for Josh Jacobs last year. Let's zoom it back. In his 7-year career, 4.3 yards per carry. So right on par. Last year, 4.4 yards per carry. His 7-year career, 4.3 yards per carry. So far in 2 games this year, 3.6. It's been tough to come by, and you can look at the numbers. I'll try to pull it up. He had over 20 totes last week, and I think he had like 80-some yards. It was tough. It was tough running for Josh Jacobs. It was tough to find those avenues. He had 23 for 84 last week, a 3.7 average per carry. It's been tough sledding for Josh Jacobs so far. you would expect, given who Green Bay has on the offensive line, once they get that camaraderie down, once they get healthy, Banks, Tom both back in the fold, and Jordan Morgan, has been fine, and Anthony Belton was fine for the most part, and Darian Kennard, who filled in a little bit early on in the first half against Washington, has been fine, but you want to get that chemistry down with your starting five, your best five, as they always put it in Green Bay, where we're going to put our best five offensive linemen out there. And once they do that, I would imagine things open up more for Josh Jacobs. But it's been difficult so far for the bell cow for Green Bay. And then a couple more things I want to hit on with Cleveland's defense. When you talk about havoc plays, if we describe a havoc play on defense as a quarterback pressure, a forced fumble, an interception, a PBU, or a TFL, Browns are third in the NFL in havoc percentage. 46.1% of the time, they are causing a havoc play on defense. That, again, is defined as a quarterback pressure, forced fumble, interception, PBU, or TFL. Browns are third in the NFL in havoc percentage at 46.1. It's a good defense, very good defense. But in turn, we believe it's a very good Packers offense, and it's a Packers offense that has sort of done a 180. Last year, early on in games, we would see them rely on Josh Jacobs to try to open up the passing game more. This year, it's been heavy dosages of Jordan Love in the passing game in the first half against Detroit, in the first half against Washington. Josh Jacobs had 6 carries for 8 yards at halftime of Week 1 against the Lions, opened it up in the second half. Struggled throughout against Washington, was able to carve out over 80 yards, but it took 23 totes to do so. It was the passing game early on. These chunk plays to Tucker Kraft, who had a late touchdown in that game as well. The sideline pass to Malik Heath. Dontavian Wicks on a couple of quick hitters early on in that game against Washington. The offense for Green Bay is on very steady ground. 27 points against Detroit, 27 points against Washington. So I'm telling you, Cleveland's defense, it's good. It's a really good defense. But in turn, this Packers offense has looked pretty damn good too. But now if you're missing Tucker Kraft, it's just how many hits can you absorb, right? You're already without Watson. Now this will be your first game without Jayden Reed, even though he missed most of the Washington game. That injury, the broken collarbone, came on the first drive of the game. Now you're without Tucker Kraft, 124 yards on 6 receptions and a touchdown last week. How many hits can this offense absorb before it becomes a little too overwhelming? We'll find that out this Sunday, or at least get a good glimpse of it. I will say this Sunday being the third game, I'm just trying to think back here. I'd have to go back and look, so I don't want to necessarily speak in absolutes here, but I do believe this is probably the Packers' toughest test to date. And that's not a knock on what Detroit brings to the table and what Washington brings to the table, but I'm telling you, the Browns have pretty good defense. Doesn't mean the Packers can't exploit it. Doesn't mean the Packers can't put up 27 points like they did the first 2 weeks, but I'm just letting you know the numbers, and you go watch the tape. Like, Cleveland's defense is pretty good. If Green Bay can, keep the pocket clean, and I know that's the goal of, a quarterback's numbers are always going to look good if you can keep a clean pocket, and it's the goal of every team to keep their quarterback upright and give him all the time in the world. But you look at Jordan Love's numbers when he's had a clean pocket this year, he's been absolutely surgical, absolutely lethal. Jordan Love in a clean pocket this year, folks. 29 of 35, 394 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 0 turnover-worthy plays. Again, clean pocket for Jordan Love this year. 29 of 35, 394 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 turnover-worthy plays. We'll see what he can do without, I'm guessing Tucker Kraft's going to be out, without Jayden Reed. This kind of begs the question. Jordan Love said Wednesday, when he was talking to the media after practice, that without Jayden Reed, he said, everyone's going to get a lot more looks, obviously, in the passing game, but he said especially, I think he said MG, talking about Matthew Golden. And last week, narrow misses, 2 of them, narrow misses. Could have been 2 touchdown day for the rookie Matthew Golden. Instead, it was 0 on 0 catches. On a 4th down on the opening drive, Matthew Golden torched, I believe it was Amos, the rookie, 2nd-round pick for Washington. And Matthew Golden torched him on the near sideline. Jordan Love underthrew it in the end zone. Underthrew it slightly. Amos with a PBU, but Matthew Golden had a couple of steps. Had him beat. Had him beat to a pulp. And Jordan Love slightly underthrew it. Later on in the game, Golden got behind the corner and the safety. I don't know if it was a post route. I'd have to go back and watch. But Golden got behind every layer of the defense. Love, somehow, with how fast Matthew Golden is, slightly overthrew him. And so they're just missing. They're just a bit off. And you have to remember, Love missed a little bit of training camp with the thumb ordeal, missed preseason because of the thumb injury. They're still working on that rapport. But once that gets hit home, that rapport, that synergy between Love and Golden, it could be lights out for a lot of defenses. And I'm just putting puzzle pieces together right now and telling you I'm seeing Jaden Reed's out, Watson's still out, Tucker Kraft probably going to miss the game on Sunday. This could be a Matthew Golden breakout game. It was already trending in that direction because of how close they've been on a couple of near misses, especially last week against Washington. This could be a Matthew Golden breakout game. We'll have to wait and see. Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Genuinely appreciative of all the support. Let's flip the script. Browns offense, for as good as that Browns defense has been, the Browns offense, not good. Not good so far. 16 points week 1, 17 points week 2. What do the numbers say, though, when we dive in? Because, again, we're not box score hunters. 16 points week 1, 17 week 2. What do the deeper dive numbers say? Well, Joe Flacco has the most pass attempts of any quarterback in the NFL, entering play on Thursday here in week 3. I'm recording this before, and it'll be out and published before the kickoff between Miami and Buffalo. Joe Flacco had 45 pass attempts alone against the Ravens. And in those 45 pass attempts, Flacco averaged less than 4.5 yards per attempt of the ball traveling in the air. They're not going downfield. And so you have to ask the questions. Is it the personnel? Is the offensive line not holding up? Is it Flacco's lack of mobility, not being able to extend plays outside of the pocket when something breaks down? I think it's probably a combination of all of that. Typically, if you look on the interior of that line, you have Wyatt Teller and the other name's escaping my mind, at guard, left guard and right guard. And just kind of going about Brown's social media and content creators and what people are saying in and around Cleveland. A lot of people say the offensive line in general just stinks this year. And so you couple that. I'm trying to find the one guard. It's going to drive me nuts. Joel Bitonio at left guard, and then you have Wyatt Teller at right guard, who have been the pillars, and Conklin obviously a tackle, but he missed last week. Don't know if he's going to be back this week. It has not been good for the offensive line, and you couple that with the fact that they have Joe Flacco, who's 40 years old and has never been the most mobile quarterback, and at this point is pretty much a statue in the pocket. And you have him throwing it as much as you do, and I get last week you're playing from behind, but 45 pass attempts for Joe Flacco is typically not going to be a recipe for success. That tells me you're playing from behind. That tells me you're trying to play catch-up. That tells me you're trying to score a 21-point touchdown, which does not exist in the National Football League. And they aren't going downfield with those passes, as I mentioned. And 45 pass attempts to average 4.5 air yards per attempt is not great. And you have to keep this in mind. When you talk about this matchup, Browns offense, Packers defense, Jared Goff, not the most fleet of foot by any stretch of the imagination, but Goff can move a little bit. He's not Josh Allen, he's not Lamar Jackson, he's not Kyler Murray. He can move a little bit. Jaden Daniels, very mobile. Jaden Daniels, a true dual threat quarterback. Daniels' legs last Thursday night were a complete non-factor. Packers defense completely wiped that out from the arsenal for Washington to try to use. Joe Flacco is a statue. Joe Flacco is 40 years old. What the Packers create up front on defense on Sunday to get to Joe Flacco might need one of those not suited for work labels. Like, I'm embellishing when I say I'm a little bit worried for Joe Flacco on Sunday. We have watched this Packers defensive front feast through 2 weeks. Devontae Wyatt, 11 quarterback pressures. Micah Parsons with 10. Rashawn Gary with a couple of big sacks. Micah Parsons with a sack and a half. Eneg Bari get involved. Lucas Van Ness has had a resurgent 2 weeks to start the year. Yeah, I'm a little bit worried for Joe Flacco on Sunday. It hasn't been good through 2 weeks. Now, I'm not talking about Flacco individually. I'm talking about the whole operation starting up front with the offensive line and the fact that they have him throw it 45 times in a game, which is not the solution, but I get it when you're playing from so far behind. Joe Flacco could be in trouble on Sunday. That offensive line for Cleveland should be in trouble on Sunday with how it matches up, at least on paper, with the Packers' defensive front. And then you factor this in. Cleveland's offensive line leads the NFL in quarterback pressures and quarterback hurries allowed. And now you're facing what has so far been one of the top tier defensive fronts in the entire National Football League. And oh yeah, Jeff Hafley can mix up the looks and bring Edgerrin Cooper, Quay Walker from the inside linebacker spot when he wants to. He can line up LVN at defensive tackle and have a defensive front where it's Rashawn Gary, LVN, Devontae Wyatt, or Carl Brooks, and then Micah Parsons. And if you're the other team, you just we're going to try our best here. If you're that Cleveland offensive line, a Cleveland offensive line that, again, has allowed the most quarterback pressures and quarterback hurries of any offensive line in the NFL, and now faces this Green Bay Packers defensive front. As for the running game, Quinshon Judkins, rookie, came in, debut last week, instantly took over that backfield with touches, carries. He is electric. He has that home run capability. However, the Packers, I hyped up how good Cleveland's run defense has been so far this year. Again, Lamar Jackson, King Henry combined for 13 rushes and 36 yards. That's an incredible job by the Browns front. The Packers held both Detroit and Washington below 55 yards rushing. As a team, Commanders-Lions did not exceed 55 yards of rushing for Green Bay in its first two matchups. And in fact, the Packers, if you want to bundle it all together, and the Lions have the two-headed monster of David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs. The Commanders, of course, have Jaden Daniels, and Austin Eckler is now out for the year, and a couple other running backs that filter into the lineup. But the Packers have allowed, in totality in the first 2 weeks, 97 total rushing yards on 41 attempts. Cleveland's run defense is good. Green Bay's has been every bit as good as well. And then you mentioned Cleveland's offensive line. It's been not good, the Cleveland offensive line. It's been worse than the first two. Like Detroit replaced two offensive linemen, but it still should be a good offensive line. Washington brings in, was it Laramie Tunsil, and they should have a decent offensive line. And the Packers still hit home numerous times. They had double-digit quarterback hits on Jaden Daniels, I believe, in week 2. This will be, again, on paper and on tape, the weakest offensive line the Packers have faced so far, and so against a completely immobile quarterback. And so Green Bay has to be licking their chops defensively. And we'll just see what Quinshon Judkins done, because Gibbs, Montgomery, Daniels couldn't find any running paths in the first 2 weeks. And then another note, I mentioned the Havoc percentage with Cleveland. They're third in the NFL, and Havoc plays defensively at 46.1%. Green Bay's second, 46.2%. If you want to go to the last layer of the defense too quickly, do we all remember how good Keyshawn Nixon looked last week? All that talk, I had the dialogue myself on a few videos this offseason, just wondering aloud, certainly had my reservations. Is Keyshawn Nixon a number one cornerback? Can he be a number one cornerback? At least so far, he's looked the part. He had 5 PBUs in one game last week against Washington. And via Pro Football Focus, which I always say is not the gospel, it is not the end-all be-all, but it's a good measuring stick for certain things to use. According to PFF, 77 cornerbacks, folks. 77 cornerbacks have taken 50 or more coverage snaps this year. Keyshawn Nixon has the highest coverage grade in the league. Oh, yeah, Carrington Valentine's 5th in that same category. Good old CV. And you talk about that CB2 spot for Green Bay, because all the attention this offseason was, can Keyshawn Nixon be a CB1? Well, they bring in Nate Hobbs. Is he going to be the CB2? Can he be a CB2? I'm super curious to see the snap count totals this week. Nate Hobbs missed week 1 against Detroit. Missed a large chunk, like the last, couple weeks of training camp, preseason. Nate Hobbs was out. He returned in week 2 for his Packers debut. Last Thursday, Valentine played 61% of the snaps. Hobbs was 46% of the snaps he was on the field for. And you talk again about how good Carrington Valentine has looked so far. Those numbers last week, CV out there 61%, Hobbs out there for 46%. Was that just easing Hobbs into things? Or is this Valentine playing so well that he's earned those snaps? I am very, very curious to see how those numbers look this Sunday. Now with Hobbs healthy, another week of practice under his belt, his first game in the regular season with the Packers under his belt. I'm curious to see if the snap count total differs next week, or if they keep rolling with a 60-40 kind of thing with CV getting more snaps than Nate Hobbs. Let's finish with special teams. We know there were areas that it just it wasn't good for the Packers last week. Hopefully better this week. Browns, on the other hand, I mean, the Packers have things nailed home. You know, McManus missed a field goal. I'm not worried about that. Brandon McManus has been nails since he came over to Green Bay last year. I would say my biggest worry right now with the Packers on special teams comes in the form of punt return. Mecole Hardman could have carved out that role himself to earn a roster spot, and right out of the gates, week 1 of the preseason, we all know the story. He had 2 back-to-back punt returns that were just miserable. One that he muffed on a 2-hopper, and the Jets recovered. Another one where he backpedaled, received it inside his own 5, and got mauled. Just wasn't good. And now Jayden Reed's out, and how much was Jayden Reed going to be back there anyways? But obviously he's a candidate to be back there, and they tried Matthew Golden last week, and Matthew Golden backpedaled and received one inside his own 5 and was brought down at, I think, the 3-yard line instead of letting it bounce. My biggest concern right now is just what are they going to do at punt return? I don't know if there's a solution. But on the flip side of that, the Browns special teams haven't been great either. Browns special teams haven't been good in a long time. I'm seeing Browns content creators, radio hosts saying their special teams are the worst in the league. I saw that from a couple outlets this week when I was doing my research. And so I went and looked. Week 1, Browns missed an extra point, missed a 36-yard field goal late to take the lead against Cincinnati. Week 2, they had a punt blocked, and they allowed a long punt return where Baltimore would start the possession deep in Cleveland territory. So not great. And there's other things too. Penalties. There was one penalty littered in there as well. So Packers are, we'll wrap it up. Packers are favored by 7.5. It's a huge spread for a road team in an NFL game. You know, this isn't college. This isn't Georgia playing Middle Tennessee or, you know, whatever power conference against non-power conference, non-conference matchup you want to use. So if you're favored by 7.5 as the road team in the NFL, that's a lot of points. And at last look, that's what the Packers were favored by. The defense already has most of us feeling an abundant amount of confidence. On paper, they should dominate this matchup against Cleveland's offense. They should. The Packers defense should dominate on Sunday. This feels like, bookmark this one, or just in your mind bookmark it. This feels like a Joe Flacco 2-interception type of game to me. I'll say Joe Flacco throws 2 picks in this game. Green Bay has one this year. Evan Williams reading the eyes of Jared Goff when he was trying to hit Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot on a play late in the first half deep in Green Bay territory. It was a beautiful read and a beautiful play by Evan Williams. Green Bay has 1 interception this year. They had 17 in 17 games last year. A lot of them came early on in the season. So that's 1 a game. So I'm saying let's make it 3 through 3 weeks this year with 2 on Sunday. Xavier McKinney was very close last week against Jaden Daniels on 1. You feel like this is a game, given the momentum Green Bay has, a lot of hype. You hope that's not going to their head, but given the momentum Green Bay has going into this, given that they had extra time off to prepare, they played last Thursday, so they get those 3 extra days to filter it out. Cleveland played last Sunday. It just seems like the Packers should win as long as they don't make like egregious errors on offense, because I have all the confidence in the world in the Packers defense in this matchup against Joe Flacco and that offensive line. I have all the confidence in the world in Green Bay's defense. If they don't make catastrophic mistakes on offense, unless like some unforeseen things happen and Joe Flacco goes back into the fountain of youth and Jerry Jeudy's just torching our secondary and Quinshon Judkins runs wild on a couple of runs, which could happen, you know, who knows. The Packers should win this, because if they get to 21 points, I feel like that should be enough. Again, the Browns 16 week 1, 17 week 2, and it has not been good. And their offensive line has not been good. And the Packers' defensive front has been one of the best in the business so far. So I think if you can get to 21 if you're Green Bay, which Cleveland's defense is really good, you feel like in this matchup that could be enough to win. So we'll see. Packers favored by 7.5. Let me know what you guys and gals think. Always appreciative of all the support. Please click the subscribe button. It takes 2 seconds to do so. We'll see you next time.